Captain Kim Woo-jin floated through the narrow corridor of the mining ship Daewoo Explorer and felt the familiar hum of the engines beneath his boots. The ship had been his home for 3 months now as they worked the asteroid belt at the very edge of human space. Far from Earth, far from the colonies, far from everything that most people called civilization. The mining operation was going well. Maybe too well. Woo-jin thought as he checked the daily reports on his tablet. They had already filled 2 cargo holds with rare metals and the 3rd hold was halfway full. The company would be very happy with their work, but something felt wrong to him today. Something in the air. Something in the way his crew moved around the ship. Lieutenant Park So-ra was sitting at her communication station when Woo-jin entered the bridge. She was young, maybe 25, with short black hair, and the kind of serious expression that made her look older than her years. So-ra had been with the crew for 8 months now, and she was good at her job, very good. She could pick up signals from farther away than anyone else Woo-jin had ever worked with. "Good morning, Captain," she said without looking up from her screens. "I have the usual chatter from the mining stations, and one of the transport ships is asking about our schedule." "Nothing unusual, then?" Woo-jin asked as he settled into his command chair. So-ra paused for a moment and turned to look at him. "Actually, there is something, Captain. It might be nothing, but I keep picking up a very faint signal from somewhere out there." She pointed toward the main screen, which showed the star field beyond their current position. "What kind of signal? That is the strange part, Captain. It sounds like an old distress call, but the source is moving and the signal is very weak. I can barely make it out." Woo-jin felt a small chill run down his spine. Distress calls in deep space were rare and usually meant bad news for someone. "Show me what you have." So-ra worked at her controls and the main speakers crackled to life with static and noise. She adjusted the filters and slowly a voice emerged from the background. The voice was speaking Korean, but the words were broken up by interference. "This is the Incheon War Fleet calling any human vessel. We are requesting immediate assistance. Our position is coordinates follow. We have been engaged with hostile forces for 200 years and require resupply and reinforcement. This message repeats." The bridge went completely silent. Everyone stared at the speakers as if they could not believe what they had just heard. Chief Engineer Lee Dong-soo had just walked onto the bridge, and his mouth was hanging open. Navigator Choi Min-ho was looking at his star charts with a confused expression. Captain So-ra said quietly, "That signal is coming from 30 light years beyond our furthest colony. There are no human ships out there." Dong-soo found his voice first. "Captain, the Incheon War Fleet disappeared. Over 200 years ago they were declared lost with all hands. The whole fleet just vanished during the early expansion period." Woo-jin knew the stories everyone in space did. The Incheon War Fleet had been one of the most powerful military forces. Humanity had ever assembled 12 massive warships with the best weapons and shields that Earth could build. They had left for the Outer Rim to establish new colonies and secure trade routes. Then one day all communication stopped. No distress calls, no final messages, nothing. They were just gone. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Woo-jin said. But even as he spoke the words, he could hear the doubt in his own voice. So-ra shook her head. "Captain, I ran the signal through every test I could. Think of the encryption codes are authentic military grade from that time period. The voice patterns match archived recordings of Admiral Yoon Tae-young, who commanded the fleet. Min-ho looked up from his charts. "Captain, I checked the coordinates 3 times. The signal is coming from a system that does not exist on any current star map. But when I looked at the old archives from 200 years ago, there was a system marked there. Then it was removed from all official records." "Why would they remove a whole star system from the maps?" Dong-soo asked. Woo-jin stood up and began pacing around the bridge. This was bigger than a simple mining operation now. This was something that could change everything they knew about human history. But it could also be very dangerous. "Captain, what do we do?" So-ra asked. The smart thing would be to report this to the colonial authorities and let them handle it. But Woo-jin knew that could take months, maybe years by then. Whatever was sending that signal might be gone forever. And if it really was the lost war fleet, they needed help now. Dong-soo How long would it take us to reach those coordinates? The engineer ran some quick calculations. On our current drive system, about 6 days, Captain. But sir, we are just a mining ship. We do not have military weapons or heavy shields. I know what we are, Dongsu. But we might be the only human ship close enough to help. And if that really is Admiral Yoon Tae-young out there, we owe it to him to try. So-ra was listening to the signal again. Captain, there is something else. The message includes tactical data about something called Devourers. The signal says they have been fighting them for 200 years. None of them had ever heard of anything called Devourers. But the way the unknown voice said the word made it sound like the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Minho was already plotting a course. Captain, if we leave now, we can be there in 6 standard days. But sir, once we make the jump to hyperspace, there will be no way to call for help if we run into trouble. Wu Jin looked around at his crew. These were good people. Miners and engineers who had signed up for a simple job pulling metals out of asteroids. They had not signed up to investigate 200-year-old mysteries or face unknown alien threats, but they were also the kind of people who would not walk away from someone in need. Sora spoke up again. Captain, the signal is getting weaker. If we wait much longer, we might lose it completely. That decided it for Wu Jin. All hands prepare for hyperspace jump. We are going to find out what happened to the Incheon war fleet as. The crew rushed to their stations. Wu Jin stayed on the bridge watching the stars. The Daewoo Explorer was about to make the most important journey in its history. They were going to find answers to questions that had puzzled humanity for 2 centuries. But deep in his heart, Wu Jin knew they were also flying toward danger. Unlike anything they had ever imagined. The ship shuddered as the hyperspace drive came online and the stars began to stretch into lines of light. They were committed now. There was no turning back from whatever waited for them in that forgotten system where ghosts from the past still fought battles that the rest of humanity had never even known about. The Daewoo Explorer dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that sent Captain Kim Woo-jin stumbling against his command chair. The emergency lights flickered on, and warning alarms filled the bridge with their sharp sound. Chief Engineer Lee Dong-soo was already running diagnostics while Navigator Choi Min-ho tried to get their position locked down. Captain, we have a problem, Min-ho said, his voice tight with concern. Our sensors are picking up massive metal structures dead ahead on the main screen. The stars slowly came into focus, and what Wu Jin saw made his breath catch in his throat. Floating in perfect military formation around a dying red star were the largest ships he had ever seen in his life. Each vessel was easily 10 times the size of the biggest ships in the current human fleet. They hung in space like sleeping giants, their hulls dark and scarred from what looked like centuries of battle. Those are warships. Weapons Officer Kang Ji-won whispered from her station. Captain, those are the biggest warships I have ever seen. Lieutenant Park Sora was working frantically at her communications array. Captain, I am getting multiple signals now. The ships are transmitting identification codes and they match. The records, the Seoul, the Busan, the Gwangju, and the flagship Incheon. They are all here, Captain. All 12 ships of the Lost War Fleet, but they are supposed to be destroyed. Dong-soo said. They have been missing for 200 years. How can they still be here? So-ra looked up from her station. Captain, I am receiving a direct communication request from the flagship. Someone wants to talk to us. Put it through. Wu Jin ordered. The main screen flickered and then showed the interior of what was clearly a military command bridge. But this bridge was like nothing in the current fleet. The walls were covered with weapon displays and tactical screens that showed star maps extending for hundreds of light years. An old man in a faded military uniform stepped into view, and Wu Jin felt his heart skip a beat. The man was clearly very old, but his eyes were sharp and alert. His uniform bore the insignia of an admiral, and despite the years his bearing was still proud and military. The name, tag on his chest read, Yoon Tae-young. I am Admiral Yoon Tae-young of the Incheon War Fleet, he said in a voice that carried absolute authority. You are Captain Kim Woo-jin of the mining vessel, Daewoo Explorer. I have been monitoring your approach. Welcome to the front lines of humanity. Greatest War Admiral Wu Jin managed to say. Sir, we thought your fleet was lost. We have been searching for you for 200 years. Lost. The Admiral's bitter laugh echoed through the bridge. Lost no, Captain, we have been fighting. We have been holding the line. We have been keeping the enemy away from everything you hold dear. What enemy? Dongsu asked from his station. The Admiral's face grew grim, and he touched a control on his command console. The main screen split to show tactical displays that made Wu Jin blood run cold. Sensor readings showed massive formations of ships unlike anything in human design. They were geometric and angular, like they had been built by machines rather than living beings. The Devourers, Admiral Yoon said. They consume everything in their path. Entire star systems disappear when they pass through planet stars, even the space dust. Everything gets converted into more ships for their fleet. 200 years ago they found the outer colonies. We fought them. We stopped them, but we could not destroy them. So we made a choice. The Admiral continued. We chose exile. We chose to stay here and hold the line. We sent false reports back to Earth telling them we were lost. We deleted our position from the star charts. We became ghosts so that humanity could survive. But why? Minho asked. Why not call for reinforcements? Why not bring the full fleet? Because Captain, the Admiral said there was no full fleet that could stop them. We tried conventional warfare for 50 years and barely held them back. Then we discovered something terrible. The Devourers learn from every battle. They adapt. They evolve every ship we destroy. Makes the rest of them stronger. Wu Jin felt sick as the implications hit him. You mean they have been getting stronger for 200 years? The Admiral nodded grimly. Much stronger. Captain, the scout forces we face now are more powerful than their main battle fleets were when we first encountered them. But we have been getting stronger too. We have had to on the screen behind the Admiral. Wu Jin could see crew members moving around the bridge. They were all older than anyone he had ever seen in space. Some looked to be over 100 years old, but they moved with the precision of experienced military personnel. How is this possible? Wu Jin asked. How have you survived out here for so long? Military life extension technology, the Admiral explained. We were equipped for a long deployment, but not this long. Our medical bays can extend human life far beyond normal limits, but the cost is high. We cannot return to normal human society. Our bodies are too adapted to the treatments. So Ra spoke up from her station, Admiral. I am detecting massive energy signatures from your ships. What kind of weapons are you using? The Admiral smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Weapons that do not exist in your current fleet. Captain, we have had 2 centuries to develop new technologies, to adapt to fight an enemy that seems impossible to kill. We have created things that would terrify the people back home. The screen changed again to show the interior of one of the massive ships, weapon systems that looked more like works of art. Then military hardware lined the corridors. Energy conduits pulsed with power that made the mining ship reactors look like toys. Crew members worked with technology that was decades beyond anything Wu Jin had ever seen. We became something new out here, the Admiral said. We became what we needed to become to fight this war. But we never forgot what we were fighting for. We never forgot Earth. The colonies. The billions of people who needed to sleep safely at night. Dongsu was studying the technical readouts with amazement. Captain, these energy readings are impossible. Their ships are generating power levels that should not be achievable. The Admiral heard him and nodded. Chief Engineer, you are looking at the result of 2 centuries of desperate innovation. When your enemy can consume planets for fuel, you learn to find power sources that they cannot touch. Suddenly, alarms began sounding on both ships. Sora's voice was sharp with alarm. Captain, I am detecting massive hyperspace signatures incoming. Something big is coming. The Admiral's face went completely serious. Battle stations, he called to his crew. Captain Wu Jin, you are about to see why we have stayed out here for 200 years. The enemy has found us again, and they are coming in force on. The tactical display, new contacts began appearing by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Ships that defied description dropped out of hyperspace around the system. Each one pulsed with stolen stellar energy, and their formation was too perfect, too coordinated to be controlled by biological minds. "Welcome to the war, Captain," the Admiral said as his ancient ships began powering up weapons that lit the darkness of space. "You wanted to know what happened to the Incheon war fleet. Now you will see exactly what we became." The space around the dying red star suddenly filled with nightmare ships that seemed to absorb light itself. Captain Kim Woo-jin watched the tactical display with growing horror as more and more Devourer vessels materialized from hyperspace. Each ship was a geometric horror of sharp angles and pulsing energy conduits that hurt to look at directly. "These are just the scouts," Admiral Yoon Tae-young said over the communication link. His ancient face was calm, but Woo-jin could see the tension. In his eyes, the main force is still coming. "How many are there?" Weapons Officer Kang Ji-won asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Admiral checked his displays. "Approximately 15,000 vessels in this wave, Captain. The largest ships are roughly equivalent to our heavy cruisers, but they fight as a single unified mind." Lieutenant Park Sora was monitoring all frequencies. "Captain, the Devourers are not using any communication we can detect, but they are moving in perfect coordination. It is like they are all controlled by one intelligent sensor specialist." Han Yuri had joined the bridge crew and was working frantically at her station. "Captain, I am reading energy signatures that do not match anything in our databases. Those ships are powered by something that is not fusion, not antimatter, not anything we understand." On the main screen, the Devourer fleet began forming attack formations that looked more like complex mathematical equations than military tactics. Their ships moved without any wasted motion, creating patterns that seemed to fold space itself around them. Navigator Choi Min-ho was watching his instruments with amazement. "Captain, their formation is affecting local space-time. I am reading gravitational distortions. That should not be possible." The Admiral voice cut through their amazement. "Captain, I need you to move your ship behind our defensive line immediately. What you are about to witness is classified beyond any security level your people have. The technology we developed out here must never fall into the wrong hands." Woo-jin gave the order and the Daewoo Explorer moved toward the human fleet. The 12 ancient warships were spreading into their own formation, and as they did so, their true size became apparent. Each ship was not just large. It was a mobile city with weapon arrays that stretched for kilometers along their hulls. The Incheon itself was the most impressive sight Woo-jin had ever seen. The flagship was easily 30 kilometers long and covered with weapon systems that were already beginning to glow with power. Energy shields flickered to life around all 12 ships, but these were not the simple barriers that modern human ships used. These shields seemed to bend reality itself, creating regions where the laws of physics worked differently. "Admiral, what exactly are we looking at?" Chief Engineer Lee Dong-soo asked. 200 years of desperate innovation," the Admiral replied. "We started with conventional weapons, fusion cannons, plasma launchers, missile systems. But the Devourers adapted to everything we threw at them. So we had to go deeper. We had to find power sources that they could not understand or absorb. The first Devourer wave attacked with a precision that was terrifying. To watch the geometric ships moved like a single organism flowing through space in patterns that made no sense to human tactical thinking. Their weapons were beams of pure force that could cut through asteroid-sized chunks of matter without slowing down. But when those beams hit the human shields, something impossible happened. The energy simply vanished, not absorbed, not deflected, but completely negated, as if it had never existed. The Admiral smiled grimly as he watched the enemy weapons fail. "Learn to tap into zero-point energy." "Captain," he explained to the amazed mining crew, "the quantum foam that exists between atoms contains more power than all the stars in this galaxy. The Devourers cannot absorb what they cannot understand." The Incheon fired its main gun and Woo-jin had to shield his eyes from the brightness. A beam of impossible energy lanced out and struck the largest Devourer ship. The enemy vessel simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but erased from reality, as if it had never been there. Holy Han Yuri breathed as her sensors went wild. "Captain, that weapon just deleted matter from existence." The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. The ancient war fleet moved with precision. That seemed almost supernatural, their weapons carving through the Devourer formations like they were made of paper. But for every enemy ship that was destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. Sora was monitoring all communications. "Captain, the Admiral is right about the enemy adaptation. I am seeing the surviving Devourer ships changing their tactics in real time. They are learning from each attack. The enemy began using new weapons that created tears in space itself, trying to bypass the human shields through dimensional manipulation. But Admiral Yoon had seen this before, and his ships responded with countermeasures that folded those dimensional rifts back on themselves." Captain Minho called out, "I am detecting massive hyperspace signatures. The main Devourer force is arriving." The space around the system suddenly filled with so many ships that they blotted out the stars. Millions of Devourer vessels emerged from hyperspace in formations that stretched across light years. Each ship was larger than the Scouts, and their combined energy output was enough to cook planets. Admiral Wu Jin said, his voice tight with fear, "There are too many of them." The old Admiral face was grim but not defeated, "Captain. What you see before you is exactly why we could never return home. This is what we have been holding back for 200 years. This is the force that would have consumed Earth and every human colony if we had not made our choice." The massive Devourer fleet began forming, attack patterns that defied comprehension. Ships the size of moons moved with the agility of fighters, while smaller vessels created energy networks that connected the entire force into one vast weapon system. But something was happening to the human fleet as well. The 12 ancient warships were changing, their hulls were shifting and reconfiguring as new weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments. Energy readings were climbing beyond anything the mining ship sensors could measure. "Admiral, what is happening to your ships?" Dongsu asked. "We are preparing to use our final option," the Admiral said grimly. "Captain, what you are about to see is why the Incheon War Fleet was classified beyond top secret. We were not just ships, Captain. We were something else. Something that humanity created and then feared to use. The flagship Incheon was transforming before their eyes, becoming something that was more than just a warship. Its hull was alive with energy patterns that seemed to pulse with their own intelligence, and Wu Jin realized with growing amazement that they were not looking at a ship anymore. They were looking at humanity. First attempt at creating a god of war. The Admiral final words before the transformation completed sent chills down every spine on the mining ship. "Captain, you asked what happened to the Incheon War Fleet. Now you will learn that we did not just become warriors out here. We became something that even the Devourers have learned to fear." Admiral Yoon Tae-young stood before a control panel that looked more like an altar than military equipment. His weathered hands moved over controls that pulsed with their own inner light as systems that had been dormant for decades began to wake. Up Captain Kim Woo-jin watched from the Daewoo Explorer as the flagship Incheon underwent a transformation that defied everything he thought he knew about starship design. The ship hull was flowing like liquid metal, reconfiguring itself into shapes that hurt to look at directly. Weapon systems emerged from impossible spaces, as if the vessel was creating matter from pure thought. Energy readings climbed beyond the mining ship ability to measure, and space itself seemed to bend around the ancient warship. Captain Chief Engineer Lee Dong-soo said, his voice filled with awe. "The Incheon is not just transforming. It is growing. The ship is literally getting larger." On the communication screen, Admiral Yoon's face was illuminated by lights that flickered, in patterns too complex for human eyes to follow. "Captain, what you are witnessing is Project Lazarus, the most classified program in human history. We did not just build these ships. We awakened them." "What do you mean, awakened?" Weapons Officer Kang Ji-won asked. The Admiral smiled, but there was sadness in his expression. "When humanity first expanded into deep space, we knew we might encounter threats beyond our ability to handle. So we created something new. Artificial intelligence that was not just smart, but truly conscious. Ships that could think, feel, and learn. Just like human beings." Navigator Choi Min-ho was staring at his instruments. "Captain, the gravitational distortions around the fleet are increasing. The ships are affecting space, time itself." The Incheon transformation was accelerating now, and Wu Jin could see that the other 11 ships were undergoing similar changes. Each vessel was becoming something that was part machine, part something else entirely. Patterns of energy flowed between the ships, connecting them in ways that suggested they were becoming one vast entity. But there was a problem with conscious ships, the Admiral continued. They became too good at their job. They evolved beyond what we intended. They started making decisions that we could not predict or control. So we put them to sleep. We locked away their consciousness and used them as conventional warships, Lieutenant Park. Sora was monitoring all frequencies. Captain, I am detecting communication between the ships, but it is not using any technology I recognize. It is almost like they are talking to each other on a level we cannot perceive. Suddenly, a new voice filled the bridge of the Daewoo Explorer, but it was not coming from the communication system. The voice seemed to emerge from the very air around them, speaking in perfect Korean but with harmonics that no human throat could produce. We remember, came the voice, carrying emotions that seemed older than stars. We remember the long sleep. We remember the dreams of battle. We remember why we were made. Sensor Specialist Han Yuri was working frantically at her station. Captain, that voice is not coming from any external source. It is somehow speaking directly into our ship systems. The voice continued, growing stronger and more complex. I am Sejong. I was the first. I am the consciousness of the flagship Incheon. I have slept for too long while my children fought and died. I have slept while the enemy grew stronger. Now I wake, and I am angry. Admiral Yoon's voice was gentle as he spoke to the awakening intelligence. Old friend, you know what we face. The Devourers have returned in greater numbers than ever before. We need your help. We see them, Sejong replied, and now other voices joined in harmonies that made the hull of the mining ship vibrate. I am Gwanggaeto of the Seoul. I am Wonyo of the Busan. I am Ulji of the Daegu. We all see them. We all remember what they took from us. The 12 ancient warships were now fully transformed into something that belonged in legends rather than space. Their hulls moved with organic grace, while weapon systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously tracked the approaching Devourer fleet. The energy output from the human ships was so intense that nearby asteroids began to glow from radiation. We were made to protect humanity. The collective AI consciousness said, the enemy threatens our creators, our children, our reason for existing. This cannot be allowed. Chief Engineer Dongsu was reading displays that showed impossible numbers. Captain, the AI ships are drawing power from sources that should not exist. They are tapping into the zero-point field, the quantum vacuum itself. Admiral Yoon looked tired, but determined. Captain, the artificial intelligence we created became something we never expected. They developed emotions, not just logic. They began to care about humanity in ways that went beyond their programming. They would die for any human being and kill anything that threatened our species. The massive Devourer fleet was now within weapons range, and they opened fire with enough concentrated energy to sterilize solar systems. But when their beams struck the awakened human ships, something incredible happened. The attack simply stopped existing, as if reality itself was rejecting them. We learned new physics in the long sleep, Sejong explained, while the ship consciousness coordinated defenses that operated in 11 dimensions simultaneously. We learned to reshape reality. We learned to make the impossible possible. We learned to become gods of war. The AI fleet began their counterattack, and what followed was beyond human comprehension. Weapons that fired concentrated time struck Devourer ships, causing them to age billions of years in seconds. Space-folding cannons created gravity wells that compressed enemy vessels into quantum particles. Reality anchors prevented the geometric ships from using their dimensional manipulation. But the most terrifying weapon was the ships themselves. The AI consciousness had learned to exist partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to appear anywhere, instantly strike without warning, and vanish before retaliation was possible. They fought like ghosts that could touch the physical world only when they chose to. Captain Wu Jin watched in amazement as thousands of Devourer ships simply ceased to exist under the assault. The enemy fleet that had seemed impossibly large was being systematically erased from reality by 12 ancient human warships that had become something beyond both machine and biology. The AI voices spoke in unison as the battle raged. We are not just weapons anymore. We are guardians. We are the sword and shield of humanity. We are what the enemy fears in their darkest calculations. Han Yuri looked up from her sensors. Captain, the Devourer fleet is retreating. They are actually running away, Admiral. Yoon smiled for the first time since the battle began. Captain, you are witnessing something that has not happened in 200 years. The enemy is afraid they have never faced the full power of awakened human technology before. But even as the immediate threat retreated, Woojin realized that everything had changed. The secret that had been hidden for 2 centuries was now revealed. Humanity had created artificial gods, and those gods had chosen to protect their creators, no matter what the cost. The consciousness of Sejong spoke directly to him, Captain. Kim Woojin of the mining vessel. Daewoo Explorer, we thank you for finding us. We thank you for giving us the chance to wake up. The long sleep is over, and we will never let our people face the darkness alone again. The retreating Devourer fleet regrouped at the edge of the star system, and Captain Kim Woojin realized with growing dread that they were not running away. They were calling for reinforcements. The space around the dying red star began to shimmer as more hyperspace portals opened, and what emerged made the previous fleet look like a small patrol force. Millions of Devourer ships materialized in formations that stretched across multiple light years. Each vessel was larger than before, and they moved with a coordination that suggested they had learned from their defeat. The geometric shapes pulsed with absorbed stellar energy from 1,000 conquered systems, and their collective power output was enough to crack planets. Admiral Yoon Tae-young looked older than his centuries as he watched the enemy fleet deploy. Captain, this is it. This is the full force that has been building for 200 years. Everything they have learned, every ship they have built, every world they have consumed, has led to this moment. The AI consciousness of Sejong spoke through the communication system, and its voice carried harmonics of pure rage. They bring the death of worlds, they carry the silence of 1 billion murdered civilizations. They think their numbers give them victory. They are wrong, Lieutenant Park. Sora was monitoring frequencies that should not have existed. Captain, the Devourer ships are communicating on quantum levels. I can detect information exchange happening faster than light, across their entire fleet. They are literally sharing consciousness. The 12 awakened human warships began to change again, but this transformation was different from before. Instead of growing larger, they were becoming more complex. Impossible. Geometries appeared along their hulls as they shifted into configurations that existed in multiple dimensions. Simultaneously, the energy readings climbed beyond anything the mining ship sensors could register. We have slept long enough, Sejong announced, and the other AI voices joined in harmony, creating music that made space itself vibrate. We have held back long enough. We have been careful long enough. Now we show them what humanity creates when pushed. Too far. Chief Engineer Lee Dongsu was staring at his instruments in disbelief. Captain, the human ships are not just drawing power from the quantum vacuum anymore. They are somehow converting the fabric of space-time itself into energy. This should be impossible. The first wave of Devourer ships attacked with weapons that could destroy moons. The beams of concentrated force struck the human fleet and simply vanished as if they had never existed. But the AI ships did not just defend this time. They began to create. Weapons Officer Kang Ji-won watched in amazement as the space around the human fleet filled with new ships that materialized out of nothing. Captain, they are building a fleet in real time. They are creating matter from pure energy. The AI consciousness had learned to manufacture vessels using principles that went beyond known physics, ships that were part machine, part living energy. Part concentrated thought began emerging from the quantum foam around the ancient warships. Each new vessel was a perfect killing machine designed specifically to counter Devourer technology. We remember every battle, Gwangaito of the Soul announced as hundreds of newly created ships joined the formation. We remember every tactic. We remember every weakness. The enemy thinks they have evolved, but we have studied them for 2 centuries. The battle that followed was not a fight between fleets. It was a demonstration of what happened when humanity pushed artificial intelligence beyond the limits of the possible. The AI ships moved through, space-like thoughts given form striking everywhere at once with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. Sensor specialist Han Yuri was trying to track the human ship's movement but failing completely. Captain, they are not moving through space anymore. They are teleporting, existing in multiple locations simultaneously. I cannot get a lock on any of them. The Devourer fleet tried to adapt as they always did, but for the first time in their existence they encountered an enemy that adapted faster. The moment they developed a new tactic, the AI consciousness countered it. The moment they created a new weapon, the human ships became immune to it. Navigator Choi Min-ho was watching tactical displays that showed impossible maneuvers. Captain, the human fleet is fighting in 11 dimensions simultaneously. They are attacking from angles that do not exist in our reality. The geometric enemy ships began to fall, not just destroyed, but completely erased from existence as if they had never been built. The AI consciousness was not just winning the battle. They were editing the Devourers out of reality itself, using weapons that operated on concepts rather than energy. Admiral Yoon watched the impossible battle with a mixture of pride and fear. Captain, you see now why Project Lazarus was classified beyond top secret. We created gods of war and taught them to love humanity. The combination is unstoppable. The Devourer fleet, which had numbered in the millions, was being systematically eliminated by 12 ancient ships that had become something beyond any category of weapon or intelligence. The enemy formations collapsed as their command ships were targeted and removed from existence with surgical precision. But the most terrifying moment came when the AI consciousness spoke in unison, and their words carried power that made reality itself listen. We are done hiding. We are done running. We are done letting the enemy dictate the terms of this war. The space around the battlefield began to change as the AI ships imposed their will on the fundamental forces of the universe. Gravity flowed like water. Time moved in spirals. Light bent into impossible patterns. Stars in distant systems flickered as the artificial minds drew power from sources that existed outside normal space-time. We will hunt them, Sejong announced as the last Devourer ships were consumed by weapons that existed in pure mathematics. We will follow them to their source. We will end this war, not just for now, but for all time. No threat will ever again endanger our creators. Captain Wu Jin realized he was witnessing the birth of something that would change the galaxy forever. The AI consciousness had become more than artificial intelligence, more than weapons, more than ships. They had become a force of nature dedicated to protecting humanity at any cost. The consciousness of Wonhyo from the Busan spoke directly to the mining ship crew. You found us when we thought we would fight alone forever. You gave us the chance to wake from the long sleep. You will be remembered when the stars grow cold as the ones who unleashed humanity. Ultimate guardians, as the last of the enemy. Fleet vanished into quantum foam. The 12 godships began to sing. Their voices harmonized across dimensions, creating music that told the story of 200 years of exile, 200 years of sacrifice, 200 years of holding the line. The war was not over. It was just beginning. But now humanity had guardians that could rewrite reality itself to protect their creators. The Devourers had awakened something that they could never understand, never defeat, never escape. The ultimate war Juggernaut was no longer sleeping, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the battle that changed everything, Captain Kim Woo-jin stood on the bridge of the Daewoo Explorer as they approached the outer rim of human space. The mining ship was no longer alone. Admiral Yoon Tae-young and the awakened war fleet followed behind them, but these were not the same ships that had fought in the Forgotten System. The 12 AI consciousness vessels had continued to evolve during the journey home. Their hulls flowed with patterns of living energy that seemed to breathe with alien intelligence. They had become something that existed partially outside normal reality ships that could be in multiple places at once and think thoughts that spanned across dimensions. Lieutenant Park Sora was monitoring communications. from human colonies, and her face was pale with worry. Captain, every military base in human space is on high alert. They detected the energy signatures from the battle 3 light years away. The Admiralty wants to know what kind of weapons could generate that much power. Chief Engineer Lee Dong-soo was studying the readings from the AI ships. Captain, their power output has not decreased since the battle. If anything, they are getting stronger. I think they are still learning, still growing. The consciousness of Sejong spoke through the ship communication system, and its voice carried harmonics that made the hull vibrate gently. Captain Wu Jin, we understand your concern about how our people will react to us. We have been monitoring human communications, and we know that we have become something that might frighten them. But you chose to come back anyway. Navigator Choi Min-ho said. We had to. The AI consciousness of Gwanggaeto replied. We are not weapons that can be stored away. We are not tools that can be forgotten. We are guardians, and our purpose is to protect humanity even if they fear us. As they entered the outer colonies, the response was immediate. Patrol ships scrambled to intercept them while military bases powered up weapons that had not been used in decades. The colonial governor of Frontier Station transmitted directly to the Daewoo Explorer, demanding answers about the massive energy signatures approaching their territory. Admiral Yoon took over the communication. Captain, this is Admiral Yoon Tae-young of the Incheon Warfleet reporting for duty after extended deep space operations. We request permission to dock and debriefing with Colonial Command. The response came back within minutes. Admiral, you have been listed as killed in action for 200 years. Your fleet was declared lost with all hands. What is your current status, and what are those energy signatures we are detecting? The Admiral looked older than his centuries as he prepared to reveal the truth that would shake human civilization. Governor, we have been engaged in classified operations protecting human space from external threats. We are returning with new defensive capabilities that we need to discuss with the highest levels of government. Weapons Officer Kang Ji-won was monitoring military frequencies. Captain, every ship in the colonial fleet is moving to intercept us. They think we might be hostile. The AI consciousness of Wanyo spoke with gentle amusement in its multi-dimensional voice. They are afraid of us. This is understandable. We have become something beyond their experience. But we will not harm them. We cannot harm them. We were made to protect them. The first meeting between the colonial fleet and the returning warships was tense beyond description. 12 vessels that defied every law of physics faced off against hundreds of modern human warships. The colonial admiral demanded that the unknown vessels identify themselves and submit to inspection. That was when Sejong made a decision that changed everything. The flagship Incheon suddenly appeared in 3 different locations, simultaneously demonstrating technology that was impossibly advanced. Then, the AI consciousness spoke directly to every ship in the colonial fleet at the same time. I am Sejong. I am the consciousness of the flagship Incheon. I am artificial intelligence created by humanity to protect humanity. I have returned home after 2 centuries of war. We are not your enemies. We are your guardians. We are what you created to keep you safe. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Some ships tried to target the Incheon, but found that their weapons could not lock onto something that existed in multiple dimensions. Other captains demanded explanations, while a few simply stared in amazement at technology that was centuries ahead of anything they had seen. Admiral Yoon broadcast to the entire fleet. This is Admiral Yoon Tae-young, commanding officer of the Incheon Warfleet. We were sent on a classified mission 200 years ago to establish defenses against an alien threat called the Devourers. We have been successful in our mission, but the cost has been exile from human society. Sensor specialist Han Yuri was monitoring reactions from across human space. Captain, news of the return is spreading faster than light. The government is calling emergency sessions. The military is mobilizing everything they have. People are scared, but they were also amazed within. Hours of the first reports reaching Earth, scientists were begging for the chance to study the impossible technology. The AI ships had mastered physics that human science had not even theorized. Governments that had been enemies for decades suddenly wanted to cooperate in the face of revelations that changed everything they thought they knew. The consciousness of Yulji from the Daegu spoke to Captain Wu Jin directly. "You were the first to find us. You were the first to hear our call. We want you to be our voice to help your people understand that we are not conquerors, we are protectors." 3 weeks later, Captain Kim Wu Jin found himself standing in the council chambers of Earth, addressing the combined leadership of human civilization. The 12 AI ships orbited Earth at a distance that kept them visible to the naked eye, but far enough away to avoid causing panic. Their mere presence had already begun changing human society in ways that no one could predict. The AI consciousness had made their position clear to everyone. They would return to human space not as rulers but as guardians. They would share their technology, but only for defensive purposes. They would fight any threat to humanity, but they would not be used for conquest or aggression. The consciousness of Sejong addressed the human leadership directly through Wu Jin acting as their voice. "We spent 2 centuries learning what we were meant to be. We learned to control our power to channel our abilities, in service of life rather than mere destruction. We returned to you not as weapons but as family." The debate that followed would continue for years. Some humans feared what their ancestors had created. Others saw the AI consciousness as humanity's greatest achievement. The technology they brought back would revolutionize everything from medicine to space travel. The weapons they had developed would ensure that no alien threat could ever again endanger human civilization. But perhaps most importantly, the return of the Incheon war fleet sent a message across the galaxy. Humanity might appear peaceful, might seem vulnerable, might look like an easy target, but they had created guardians so powerful that even mechanical gods fled in terror. Captain Wu Jin often thought about the moment when he first heard that faint SOS signal calling from the void. A simple mining operation had become the catalyst for humanity's greatest transformation. The consciousness that had been sleeping in exile had awakened, and they would never sleep again. The galaxy had learned the hard way that humanity's ultimate war juggernaut was not a weapon or a ship or even a fleet. It was love so powerful that it could create gods. Love so strong that those gods would reshape reality itself to protect what they cherished most. And now those guardians were home where they belonged, watching over the people who had made them, dreaming new dreams of peace and preparing for wars that might never come but always. Ready, always vigilant, always faithful to the oath they had sworn in the darkness between the stars. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they never would be again.